Greetings, welcome back to Old Ways Rising Farm YouTube channel, where we're going to talk about pruning these yew bushes behind me correctly. Now, if you go and you drive around white picket fence suburbia, you're going to see a whole lot of these things that have two problems with them. First, somebody pruned them to look like green ice cubes that I can only compare to like prop food in the original Star Trek series. And that just looks completely unnatural and dumb in my opinion. And two, in the process of doing that, they get dead spots. Okay, all over the place they get dead spots. So we want to prune these bushes so that they are about a foot lower than they currently are, that they still look like living vegetation and not science fiction monstrosities, and that they don't get dead spots. So in order to do this, we've got to talk a little bit about why those dead spots develop first. Now, the first thing I want to talk about with this are those dead spots. If we look at how these yew bushes grow, I'm just going to snip out a piece here. If you look at how these yew bushes grow, these branches are constantly producing a lot of side branches. You can see right here this year, all these little green sprigs. These are little epicormic branches. They're dormant buds that lay just underneath the bark, and they're constantly going to be producing these little side shoots. Okay. Now, if you look here, there's all these dead twigs. These are little epicormic branches that failed because they were too shaded out. And if you look here from past pruning, we are getting denser and denser up here at the top, and sparser down below. There was a little light pocket down in that allowed these to grow. Okay, this is where those dead spots come from. So if you take a branch like this and you shear it flat, and that's all you do, now this is going to grow out more, and this is going to die. Okay, because it's going to sprout here. As you do this, then next year, people decide they want to shear it to exactly the same spot, so it ends up a little bit lower, okay? And these have all died off. So there's another year's pruning, because this branched out, and so this developed even more of a dead spot. And then next year, people want to shear it flat again, so let's do that. Okay, and now even more of this died because it was shaded out. And then the third year, yew is hard, we lose all of it, and now we have our dead spot. Okay, so we want to not do that. In order to not do that, we need a special technique when using these kind of shears. You take them and you throw them away and you never look at them again. Okay, we're not using that for this project. We're going to use our hand nippers, and we're going to use our saw. But we still have to be careful that we don't create a shield of tissue. And you can see it starting to happen here. You see how in this region we're starting to develop a thick shield of green matter, which is blocking the light from getting into the core. Okay? So before we do anything else, we're going to go and we're going to look for spots like this where light can't penetrate into the core of the bush, and we're going to prune them out. Right, so if I look at these, I have these 1, 2, 3 branches all competing for the same space. I'm going to cut out 2 of them. And when I cut them out, I'm going to cut them all the way back to their point of origin. Okay, so there's 1 out. And then there's 2 out, okay? Now the light's being better able to penetrate into here, okay? Now I have up here, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all competing for the same light. I'm going to cut out all but 1 of those, okay? So as I'm picking which ones to keep and which ones to cut, I'm going to look for ones that have the greatest amount. Can they see where my finger is, beloved? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm going to pick ones that have the greatest amount of epicormic branching, because I want green tissue all the way down into the core of the plant. So this one is pretty good. So this one's going to be my keeper, and all of this is going to come out. Okay, so I'm going to work on that a while, and then I'll show you what this looks like when I'm finished this process. So here we go. We have accomplished step one. This is all opened out, and especially here in the middle, I pulled some really big tall ones out, and those are not a complete loss because we have rooted air layer cuttings. Okay, so these will be, we'll get 2 more trees out of this prune job. If you want to see how that's done, it's in the plant propagation playlist, how to do air layers. We're opening it up. We haven't done a huge reshaping or resizing, but the first step is just pulling all of the extra material out. You want light to penetrate all the way into the core. Okay, it's going to regrow bushiness from all of these little green twigs that you see down here. Go find one of those white picket fence suburban green ice cubes, pull some of this aside, and all you're going to see are dead twigs on the inside. Okay, so if you have one of those and you want to regenerate it into a nice bush, you can do the same thing. Poke holes in it, find all the dead spots, trace those sticks back all the way to the core where they originate, cut them out, and start letting light in. These U's are very good about producing new epicormic growth, and eventually you'll get new green on the interior, and then you can cut back to that and regenerate a nice bush. I've saved hedges like that. It takes a few years, but you can do it. Now we want to do the shaping. And here, what we want to do is we want to take these, and you see how these have these kind of knotted clumps at the top? We just want to cut all that off. Okay, so we're just going to cut some of this off like that. That's nice young growth. I'll cut one of those off. Thin these pom-poms out, but always cut them back to something green. Okay, these are very good about resprouting those epicormic sprouts, but if you completely denude a twig, the tree will abort that twig. Okay, so you'll kill it. So you have to have green below where you cut. So I look at this. Can they see this well, beloved? Okay, so I want to cut off this green pom-pom, and I have all this nice green down there, so I can get away with cutting this one fairly low. Okay, just like that. When I'm looking here, look at all this nice green I've got down there. So this is too tall. I'll cut that back here. This is, I'm going to cut that out entirely. Okay. And I'm going to cut this one out. So there, we're thinning it. And again, this one is way too tall. U is hard. Gotta have sharp pruners for this. Okay. So again, we're shortening and we're thinning, allowing even more light on the inside. But we're being careful that when I cut these out, right, I just cut that from this branch and there's still plenty of green there to keep the branch alive. Okay? So again, I'm going to go through, do this, and I'll show you the results. So we have cut out about half of the green area in this bush. Okay, now what's that going to do? Well, the epicormic branches we've been talking about, the branches which sprout from those dormant buds, they are inhibited by hormones produced from these little growing tips. So the more growing tips you have, the stronger the inhibition. And I mean, you see on these, right, I don't have to look far to find one, it's breaking some of those buds even with that inhibition. When we come and we prune out more than 1/4 of the leaf area of a bush, the bush says, a brontosaurus just ate me. I need to grow to regenerate all of that growth, that tissue, okay? And that's not even really a joke. These things evolved when Brontosaurus was still here. So that's what they're adapted to, right? So this bush just thinks a dinosaur ate it, okay? That's going to release the inhibition on those dormant buds, and this is just going to sprout an entire green cloud in the spring, okay? And will come up and regenerate. Now, I've shaped it to roughly kind of a rounded mound, but there's some things that are still a little scraggly. So if I look in here, I'm not sure how well you're going to be able to see it. Hopefully you can see this a bit. They can see it well, right? You see how we have this little pom-pom at the top and then there's basically no green down that twig? I don't want to cut this entire twig out, but I have nothing green to cut it back to. So I'm leaving it, and then next fall I can cut that back by half because there will be a lot of outgrowth from that. Okay, so that's part of the decision-making process too. One half is shaping it the way I want. The other half is knowing what I need to leave alone. Okay, so you can see all of this green growth now that was hidden before, and that also means that light can get in to help these grow and establish and become new branches. So 5 or 10 years from now, these will be nice branches, and these ones that are big and woody now, we'll be able to cut back, and that keeps young tissue capable of sprouting these buds in close to the core. Okay, so you have to think long term about cycling through your branches. These big branches that are here now, 10 years from now, I want to cut back all the way to the crown. To do that, I need younger branches in the same vicinity, and these little twigs that I just exposed to the sunlight will be those younger branches. So when 3 or 4 of these are the size of my pinky, this big fat one, I'll cut back to the crown. That keeps young growth deep in so that you can keep manipulating it in this way. If you, that's the other problem with just shearing the outside, is you never allow for that branch replacement in the core. Okay, and you can get it, but the thicker and older the branches become, the more deeply buried those little dormant buds are underneath the bark. The bark thickens and it buries those buds. They have a harder and harder and harder time sprouting. So if you have a plant that hasn't had this done for 20 years, yes, you need to come and cut windows in it. You will get sparse bud back from the deep core pretty much always on a U. Okay? You never completely lose that. But it's going to be sparse instead of vibrant, right? Again, like, look at this young twig. There's just little green sprouts everywhere. Okay? If this was 2 inches in diameter, there would be 1 or 2. Okay? So you have to do this, you have to cut these holes, and you just have to let it be for 2 or 3 years until those little sprouts can establish, strengthen, get as big as your pinky. Then you can take those big nasty wooden pieces, cut it back, and then those young ones will sprout out and you're starting down the path of regenerating your bush. Okay? But you have to go slow, and you can never cut back below where there is green. Okay? So this is a 1-year process on a bush that has been maintained this way. This is a 5-year process on one of those ugly green ice cubes with dead spots in it. Okay, it takes time to regenerate your bush, but it will work. I have done it. It's going to look weird and stupid when you first start doing it, but it really, really works. So, last thought, if you're in a heavy deer browse area and you're doing this in the fall, leave extra. I've had bad experiences with these bushes a couple of times where I pruned it just to perfect, and then that winter we had a hard winter and the deer browsed it all the way back, and then it was a year or 2 until it regained its strength. Okay, so leave some extra if you do this in the fall. If you do this in the spring, you can cut it back even farther. Okay, so I'm doing this in the fall, so I'm leaving a bit extra here. That's also part of why I'm leaving some tall pom-poms here. Hopefully, if we have a hard winter and the deer want to come browse it, they'll be distracted by those, and we'll leave the core alone a little bit better. Fingers crossed. We'll just see what the winter brings. But I hope that you have found this useful. If you have, I would be most grateful if you gave the video a thumbs up. That helps the algorithm know that you've enjoyed it, and I'm always grateful when you do that. And I hope that you will have a wonderful, blessed day, and join us here next time at Old Ways Rising Farm.